right, so once again, how are we doing this morning? Awesome. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I was on vacation last week, so it is nice to be back with you and see all your smiling faces this morning. We're in this series called Habits. We're talking about how to develop habits that help you grow your faith, help you to connect with God better. We all love to talk about our favorite things, right? Like whether it's Star Wars or your favorite YouTuber or your hobby or a sport that you're in or whatever. We all love to talk about the stuff that we're interested in. We all love to talk about our favorite topics. Maybe you've seen a couple TikTok trends that are your favorite and you pull it up with your friends. You're like, check this out. Look at this. It's so funny, right? And then, so here's what I want you to do. I'm going to count to 3, okay? And I want you to scream as loud as you can. I don't do this very often because honestly it hurts my ears, but I'm giving you permission today to scream as loud as you can your favorite thing to talk about. Think about it for a second. 1, 2, 3. I was able to tell what one person said because my ears went, me too. Okay, let's try it one more time. I'm going to try to listen to other people too. 1, 2, 3. Did you say Winter Falcon? I was trying to read your lips. I have no idea what you said. What did you say? Wings of Fire, a book series. Oh, okay. Nice. I don't know what that is. Okay, Wings of Fire, Star Wars. What else did somebody say? I didn't hear it. That's not a topic. Video games, that's a good one. Food, what kind of food? All the food. Yes, I'm hungry right now. Yes. LOL, laughing out loud. I'm behind then. What was yours? Cheer. Okay, what was yours? Dogs. Okay, so we all have stuff that we like to talk about, right? So we all have different interests, right? We're all unique human beings with different interests, different likes. So I'm all based on the things that were talked about, and I'll start with my own, right? Because I'm super confident about my own, right? Then in Jared's, I want you to scream if you're in agreement. You could talk about that, or boo, like I don't have any care in the world about that. Okay? So either way, you got to say something, either yay or cheer or yip yip. Kaye, or boo if you don't like it, okay? So, Star Wars. I didn't hear any boos. Okay, awesome. Okay, how about LOL? Okay. Dogs? Okay, we got some cat people, that's okay. You're welcome here. I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, you get what I'm saying. All people are welcome. I've got 2 cats, if it makes you feel better. You know, they're for kicking, but no, I'm just kidding. just kidding. I couldn't resist. Okay, although that is one of those things that Chelsea was like, I'll take care of them. You don't have to do anything. I was like, great. Well, you know what pregnant people can't do? Change cat litters. So, my job. Anyway, I'm not bitter. So, what was something else? Video games. Okay, ready? Video games. Okay. Does anybody still play Fortnite? Okay. If you don't play Fortnite, what are your games of choice? Battlefront. Yep, too many people talking, but sounds great. I didn't hear one of them, nope. Okay, Minecraft. Yes, that's one. That's a popular one. Call of Duty is also good. Here's the thing. We all have things that we like to talk about. I bet we all have a habit of talking about the things that we like. How many of you have been in a room with somebody and you get kind of sucked into a conversation, whether it's at the lunch table or whatever, maybe it's at home with your siblings, and everybody's talking about something that you don't care about, right? But people have a habit of talking about the things that they really like. So the things that they're interested in. Here's my reasoning, I think, why people do this, why I do it, why you do it. We talk about the things that we like out of habit because we've experienced something great from that, whether it's playing Fortnite and getting that dub, or it's maybe watching Star Wars for the 50th time and it still brings the same kind of elation to your soul, right? And you experience something that is good and positive, and you want other people to experience it, right? So you talk about it, in order to help other people experience how great if it's a new show that you've started watching and you're like, it's my obsession, you need to watch the show. You're talking about it and trying to tell people the plot of it and tell them how interesting it is and who's in it so that they'll watch it so they can experience it with you. Do you have a question? It does not work with Oreos and ketchup. I'm sure you can find, anybody want to talk with her afterwards about Oreos and ketchup? There you go. We can make it work. Oreos are actually 10 times more addictive than heroin. So there's that. Actually, I don't know if that's true. That's just something I heard one time. And I wouldn't know about one of those, but I know about Oreos that they are very addicting. So yeah, you can't just have one. But we all like to talk about things that we like out of habit because we want other people to experience what we've experienced. We want other people to kind of have the same kind of joy that we've had when they experience something that we love. We want other people to experience what we like. So if we love basketball, we talk about that to our siblings, maybe because we want them to love it too. Or maybe we're really into makeup tutorials on YouTube. Anybody? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so you want other people to be able to share in that joy and awesome life hack secrets about YouTubing makeup on your face. Maybe we love collecting sneakers or something. And so you talk about it a lot, maybe to your parents about all these kinds of designs. So maybe they'll buy it for your birthday or for Christmas, right? And so you like to talk about the things that you like because you want other people to experience. And here's the reality, is talking about God can be the same way. Talking about God can have that same kind of contagion, that same kind of excitement, that same kind of experience as many of the other things that we talk about. But for many of us, talking about God or our faith can be scary. How many of you would raise your hand and say, that feels awkward or feels weird, or I don't know how to do that, or maybe I don't know enough about God, or somebody's going to ask some question that I don't know the answer to, so I'm just not going to, we feel like we've got to be the expert on something before we can talk about it, and if we don't feel like the expert, we just default to not talking about it because we don't want to be wrong and make ourselves look dumb, or maybe it's just awkward, so we don't want to ask questions, or we don't want to talk about it. Talking about our faith or about God can feel scary at times. Sometimes we're legitimately curious about something. We want to ask somebody. How many of you know somebody who probably has the answer to a question you have, but you don't really want to ask them because that would mean admitting you don't know the answer, right? Loud and proud right here. Like that's sometimes, a real thing. And so sometimes just talking about God, we treat God like almost he's a math problem. Like we have to know all the details of how he works in order to talk about him. And if we don't know everything, we feel like we can't talk about him. We feel like we can't ask questions. And let's just be honest. For many of us, God is an abstract thing, right? Abstract is hard. That means it's not like it's not tangible. You can't touch, feel, see. You just hear about and think about it. And it's kind of you make up what you think that is based on your imagination and other images you've seen before. Talking about something like God is tough. Can anybody agree? Like talking about things like God is tough. Okay, there's things about it that make it tough for the reasons I've said, but here's the reality. You don't have to be afraid about talking about God, and we're going to talk about that today. Okay, because if we're going to talk about connecting with God on a deeper level, so far in this series we've talked about the idea of talking to God and prayer. Last week Sam did that while I was gone. We've talked about the importance of having a rhythm where you actually connect with God each morning through reading your Bible, through prayer. Maybe it's listening to worship music, but different ways that you can interject God into your busy schedule and into your life so that you make habits that help you grow in your faith. Because here's the reality. We all have known people who claim to be Christians that seem to act no different than anybody else. We all know what it's like to have a standard for ourselves that we then don't live up to and then feel bad about ourselves. We all know probably what it's like to want to have a real faith, but sometimes struggle to live that out or figure out how to make it real for you in your life. So throughout this whole series, if you've missed any of it, it's on our YouTube channel. Go back and watch it. But if you want to grow in your faith, that's what this series is all about. And talking about God is actually a pretty significant part of that. So again, if that totally freaks you out to talk about God, then think about it this way. Don't think about what you know. Talk about who you know. And this is going to make it much easier. It's not going to make it, completely go away. The scariness, it won't make it completely go away, but it'll make it easier, and it's more tangible for you to talk about a who than what, because when you think about what, you think about what you don't know. But you can talk about a who all day long. The early church was started by a handful of people who were passionate about one specific person. Anybody know who that person was? Jesus, right? We're here in church. The early church writes about it. We have a whole book in our New Testament called Acts. Anybody? A-C-T-S, not like A-X-E, not like the deodorant, right? But Acts, like you act out, or the acts of the church. And the book of Acts, it tells the story of from when Jesus went up to heaven after the resurrection to then what his followers had to do after that. And so it chronicles the lives of like Peter and John, Paul, and Luke writes it down. And so the same Luke that wrote the Gospel of Luke, he wrote the book of Acts. And so you go through, and it's tells the history of the early church, those years after Jesus ascended back into heaven. And so we glean some pretty good insight from the things that they had to say and the things that happened during that time period. And so we actually look, and this is something that happened. Two of Jesus' followers, Peter and John, who I just mentioned a second ago, they were telling everybody about Jesus. And while this was going on, a few religious leaders noticed something. Check this out. This is in Acts chapter 4, verse 13. It says, when they saw the courage, the religious leaders, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with who? Jesus. They noticed that they were unschooled, ordinary people. See, if you know anything about Jesus' earlier followers, they were the people that the rabbis of that time period rejected. The people who weren't good enough in school to be able to be a disciple of a rabbi, right? They did things like fish. They were fishermen. Some of them were tax collectors, who some people would argue are very evil people, right? These are people that were not, the elite, the religious elite that like most of the Pharisees would have related to. They're not the kind of people that you would think of as like a church person. But these were the people that followed Jesus first. And actually the religious elite of that day, they noticed. They're like, these are unschooled, ordinary men. But they were astonished because of their teachings and because of what they talked about, because of who they knew, because of their experience with Jesus. They took note, and they were astonished because they could see that they knew God. Right? As Christians, we believe that Jesus is God in human form. And these men were talking about God as if they knew him, because they did. And it astonished the religious leaders of that time. See, you don't have to know everything in order to talk about God. Talking about God helps us to know him better. It starts conversations. It gets the ball rolling. If you know a lot about a subject and you talk about it, sometimes you are able to help other people know about it. But sometimes other people contribute to the conversation and make you think about things in ways you hadn't before. Talking about something helps you learn more about that thing. And the same is true about God. When you talk about God and when you talk about your experience with God, that actually helps you and others know God better. So how do we make this a habit? How do we make this practical? Because it sounds great to think about the idea of talking about God, but actually doing that practically, what's that look like? So let's dive into that a little bit. First, we can remember that we don't need to know everything to talk about God. Right? Do you need to know everything to talk about God? Are you guys awake? Do you need to know everything to talk about God? No. Okay, good. You're awake. Peter and John were not the smartest people to ever walk the face of the earth, but they had experienced and they knew Jesus. Secondly, we can do the same. We can focus on who we are talking about. You don't have to know everything to talk about God, but you can focus on the who that you're talking about. In other words, we can talk about the things that we've experienced. So if we don't know how to talk about how God created the world, right? Maybe instead we can talk about how creative God is to have made the world. Does that make sense? Let me say that again. If we don't know how to talk about how God created the world, maybe instead we can talk about how creative God is to have made the world that we live in. Or if we can't explain how God forgives us, we can share about how it feels to be forgiven and loved unconditionally by God despite the mistakes that we have made. While we may not be able to explain why bad stuff happens, and this is a big one, we can talk about how God comforts and supports us when we face hard times. Because the reality is we all face hard times, and all of us want to know why. But sometimes the most important thing for us to know is who is behind the what, and that is that Jesus is with us. He never leaves us, and he never forsakes us. We don't need to know everything to talk about God. All we need to do is share what we know about him by having a relationship with him. Now, I get for some of us that's not easy, because some of us would say, I don't know if I have a relationship with God that's tight enough to be able to talk about stuff like that. And that's cool. You can ask questions. You can still talk about God. You can talk about the things that you're not even sure of. And that gets a conversation going. You can start talking about what you're not sure of. If you're not sure that God made the world, talk to somebody about it. If you're not sure that Jesus forgives us, talk to someone about it. If you're not sure that God can actually comfort you when bad things happen, talk to somebody about it. Share those thoughts with people like your small group leader or a trusted friend who is also following Jesus and who maybe thinks differently than you because of either their experience or what they've studied about the subject. You can ask questions, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. Here's the thing. There's statistics that have gone back for quite a long time now, talking about when students like yourselves grow up in church, going to church every Sunday, hear about Jesus every week, and then go off to college and they lose their faith. Right? How many of you have heard statistics along those lines? I'll share one with you. There's one study that came out a few years ago that said 60 to 80% of students who grow up in the faith walk away from it after high school. Now that's staggering and that's discomforting, but one of the main reasons for that is because when they experienced doubt, when they were your age, they didn't talk about it. They weren't real about their feelings. They internalized them. They listened to voices that weren't necessarily true. And because they didn't talk about their doubts and work through the questions that doubts bring, which is healthy, when they were out on their own, when they finished high school and then started living their own lives, then the other voices opposing God spoke louder. And eventually their faith just faded away. See, talking about the things you're not sure of is actually really helpful no matter what it is, but especially when it comes to your faith. It's okay to talk about those things. So start talking about what you're not sure of. And then you can talk about what's happened in your own life. Have you seen an answer to prayer? Share that. Share how God has answered your prayers. If you've seen him change your attitude towards a friend or a sibling, talk about that. If you've ever seen him do something amazing in your life or in the life of somebody that you know, share about it. Talk about it. Tell your stories. Talk about what you've experienced and focus on who God is to you, because talking about God helps us to know him better. I would encourage you guys, as we go to our small groups, to start the conversation with one of those four things. Talk about, and there's going to be some questions to guide your conversations, but think about those ideas. And as you get ready to go to your small groups, there's one question in particular that I want you to be thinking about. What's one reason that you struggle to talk about God? For me, personally, it's that I don't want to make it awkward or offend somebody. And often that's why I don't talk about God. Personal confession. That's something that I've tried to get better at my whole life, and life is a journey, and I'm still working to get better at that. What is it for you? What's one reason you struggle to talk about God? I'm going to pray, and then you guys can be dismissed into small groups.